The business can't grow if you and I feel like we can't rely, aka we can't trust anyone else.
If we ask you to do something, we expect you to move it forward as far as possible. Otherwise, we wouldn't have asked you to.
We have to do everything. We have to check everything. We have to, we're responsible for everything. Obviously, we're responsible for everything, but that was the word that kept coming up for me. And then I just sort of played out, what is the result of that?
If they make a mistake, we're okay if it doesn't get moved as quickly as we would have liked, because that's part of what allows us to focus our time on the highest leverage thing.
I like the peer-to-peer friendly competition aspect of it a lot, because it forces each person to ask the question, like, why not you?
There are clearly milestones to get there. So why don't we start here, and now you have 5 goals, and let's just focus on getting that first one. Boom, welcome back to another episode of the Espresso Hour, where the running joke is this is going to be much longer than an hour, but I don't know if it will today. I think we got a handful of things we want to jam on. It's 2:47, so I'm less hyped up on caffeine than I was this morning, but the Mexico City coffee, man, I'll tell you what. The number of cafes within an arm's reach, they have these things called cafe passports that all of them have. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And there's, for each like little neighborhood, a passport for all the cafes around there. And they all collaborate. And then like once a quarter, they put out a new one. And then you just go around and collect stamps. So all that said, I'm drinking like 2 or 3 espressos a day right now, just because I'm in stamp collection mode.
You're traveling around the world.
Literally.
You know what spot I miss? I was thinking about this the other day. I miss that coffee spot downtown Midtown where they had beans from all over the world and you could pick the different beans for the espresso.
LCLO?
I thought that was so cool.
Good stuff. It's good stuff, but there's no shortage of caffeine here and good beans. So
nice.
Where you want to start today? I have a couple things we could talk about.
Dive right in. Take me on a journey.
All right, let's go for it. So we said last Espresso Hour, which I don't know if that's live yet. I think it is. I'm not sure if the first
No,
episode...
it's not.
Okay, first episode of the year is not live. So our content clip is high right now, which is very exciting, and we're going to run into new bottlenecks. But theme of the year that we talked about during our first all hands of maturity. So like, let's start with when you were doing the thought process, were there any other kind of themes of the year that you thought were in the running, and how do you settle on maturity? Because you're the one who presented this to me. I was like, that makes great sense.
The other word, which I also brought up and we talked about, was trust. And coincidentally, this has been a recurring topic for me in my weekly therapy sessions, which is also just as you grow, the growth process being, how do you enable yourself to trust people more? And the challenge with that is trust. The other side of trust is reliance. So part of what makes trust so difficult is you rely on other people, which inherently makes you more vulnerable, right? And that is why it's uncomfortable. And I think, looking at that on the personal side is one thing, and on the business side, it's sort of the same idea, it's just less emotional, which is the fact that the business can't grow if you and I feel like we can't rely, aka we can't trust anyone else. And so like we have to do everything. We have to check everything. We have to, we're responsible for everything. Obviously we're responsible for everything, but that was the word that kept coming up for me. And then I just sort of played out what is the result of that, and the result of that is a level of maturity, because it's sort of like, as you become more reliant on other people and as trust builds, the maturity comes from knowing that if something goes wrong, it's all going to be okay. You'll still be able to, you'll bounce back, you'll figure it out, you'll solve the problem. Like your whole world's not going to explode, it's fine.
I think as you said maturity and trust being like a pillar of that, the other ones that came to mind are, if maturity is the big theme, what are the things that come underneath? Trust is one of them, and I have a couple frameworks to talk about on that. I think either defensibility or decentralization So risk reduction is another part of maturity, and we talked about that at the Hormozy workshop. And then I think the third would be iteration, because maturity is just, we're doing very few new things. Like very few new things are slotted, whereas last year there was a decent number of new things. Maturity is just the improvement of something you already have. And so those things, decentralizing, trusting, and iterating, make up a more mature business. And so that's where the majority of our time is going to be spent this year in terms of project allocation. Is it increasing defensibility? Is it leading us to trust someone more? Or is it, what was the third one I said?
Iteration.
Leading to iteration in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, another component of the maturity piece is, I think part of maturity is recognizing that slow is faster than fast. Like doing less is what allows you to do more. And I've certainly felt it just personally over the years. I feel like every year I get older, I actually aspire to do fewer things because I become aware that when you try and do so many things at once, you prohibit yourself from doing a single one well. And a really impactful moment for me at the Hormozy workshop was, he was in the middle of his keynote or something, he was talking, and he was sharing a similar concept, saying how he's really had to come to terms with the fact that he probably is only going to have another 3, maybe 4 entrepreneurial seasons in his life. And you could like hear the pain as he said that, where it's almost like a kid being told you're not going to be able to play this video game forever. You know, or an athlete like knowing that you have to retire soon. And I thought that was so, I think that definitely played into that word for me as well, where I see it in our business. Like think about how many ideas we entertained the first year. And then the second year it was like, no, we have to narrow down, but we still entertained a lot of ideas. And then the third year we were like, no, we have to narrow down again. We had to fight, you know, competing ideas. And now this year literally feels like there are no new ideas. It's literally just, you have to take the thing, you have to not get distracted, and the mature, quote unquote, person, just like how someone matures in life, doesn't feel like I need to go prove myself in 20 other domains. You know, you don't need all that.
Right. And part of this maturity process, I think, comes from us talking about maturity and then laying out and operationalizing what that means, which is why I spent a good chunk of time this week on updating our vision, mission, values, and principles that we really hadn't touched since
22?
Like early 23, when we started to hire a couple people. And so I have 2 frameworks that are extremely relevant to what we just talked about, and then one more on, or let me start with this. So trust, I defined this framework within our principles. So the way I laid it out was like mission or vision, where we want to go, mission, why we want to do it, core values, kind of the what, and then operating principles, the how. Our operating principles, I put one here called total trust. And this is something that I think we can do a better job over communicating, that anyone we talk to or anyone we have building something within our team, we have total trust as a default. And so the way I explained it was like, there's 2 ways to look at trust as a battery. One, that the battery is empty when you start and you have to build it up. And another where the battery is completely full and it can only go in one direction. The more that we can tell people and feel something, or feel ourselves, that we have a full trust battery, the better we're going to be able to trust people. Because I think we have both defaulted to like, we can't trust everyone fully, they have to earn that. And I'd rather just tell everyone, if we ask you to do something, we expect you to move it forward as far as possible. Otherwise, we wouldn't have asked you to do it, or we wouldn't trust you in doing it. And then I laid out these 3 types of decisions: hats, haircuts, and tattoos, from James Clear, and basically said, we want you making all the hat and haircut decisions as much as possible, and only come to us with tattoo decisions that you think there's a big downside if you get it correct. And then we have to have the ability to give someone something and say, we're okay if they make a mistake. We're okay if it doesn't get moved as quickly as we would have liked, because that's part of what allows us to focus our time on the highest leverage thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about why that's such a hard concept, I think, for so many people. You and I do a lot of these things fairly intuitively. I mean, even the beginning of our relationship's a great example. Like we just both walked in and were like full battery, full trust, and then
Mm-hmm.
it can only go down, it can't go up, like full trust, and it worked out really well. Um, but something I think about a lot is I think the apprehension that team members feel of being wrong or doing something wrong, or like what's going to happen if, and I don't know that there's one clear answer. Like it's probably a combination of everything from parents to organized education to the previous manager you had all swirled together in a chili soup. But I do agree that something that comes very intuitively to us is worth articulating over and over and over again. Like I really don't care if there's a mistake. Just is there a reason for it, and did we learn from it? You know.
And the more that we can give them, like, part of why I put these principles together is just to give us the slogans to start to repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. And so if someone comes to us with a decision, we should rather than answering, go, is this a hat, haircut, or tattoo?
Mm-hmm.
And then get them to say, actually, yeah, this is a hat decision. I didn't need to come and get approval for this. And then reward that behavior of, okay, next time, what would you do? And then get them to do the correct thing, and then they keep moving. And that is a skill. Giving feedback to train behavior is the most important managerial skill you can have. And it's what we're going to work on a lot this year.
Yep.
The
I
more
agree.
people we manage, the bigger the team, etc.
Yep. Something that has been cool. Obviously, we came up with our first list of core values 2 years ago or whenever that was. Um, what's cool about this exercise, and like things like core values have a bad reputation, and I am just as guilty over the years of being like, that's stupid. Why would you spend time thinking about that? But I've really observed over the past 2 years how even just picking, no more than three, but picking three big ones, and then you can have sort of sub points within each one, and finding a memorable or sticky way of communicating that value as a phrase for each one. It's been really cool to see people use it or parrot it or um, embody it over the past couple of years, and you can see how it is such a simple thing where if you have simple phrases repeated over and over and over again, they become the default. And so the counterpoint is you can also see how ineffectively, if you're like a Fortune 500 company and you're like, one of our core values is um,
Honesty.
honesty, right? It's like it's like, is the repeating of that building some sort of positive repeatable behavior? And if not, then the core value isn't fulfilling the purpose that it's supposed to serve.
Here, you want to talk about the evolution a little bit? Because I think it's related to what you just said of like, you only have a handful of things that you can do given the current spot you're in. Because I think how I laid out this values evolution was, let me just make this a little bigger. We had, so I laid this out of like, okay, from 0 to 10K a year, couldn't even think about a business. From 0 to 1 million, we didn't have a vision, mission, or value, and spending any time on them would have been a waste. All we were trying to do is sell something and then
Process
hope that
payments on Stripe.
literally, like, we were trying to make money, and I said that a couple times in the video. From 1 to 3 per year, like, our only mission was just do more of what we were doing. So we wanted to help more people start riding online, and that was all 2022. There was no reason to cast a big vision or anything. Then from 3 to 6 million and from 5 to 30 team members, we did have to start creating values. One, because in the hiring process, you need to be able to have a conversation around it. And you just needed some kind of lightweight mission and vision. So that we had. And our values, not enough people talk about the evolution of a company's values. And you hear Fortune 500s, they're naturally going to have like the broadest, least impactful, least rock the boat values, because they're such a big ship that you can't really do much.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us, we had 3: extreme ownership, relentless tempo, and championship energy. It was all based around individual responsibility, speed, and competitiveness. Those same values are not the ones that are going to get us from 6 to 20 million a year and then ultimately far beyond that. So that's why I wanted to start to redo these. And I started with peaceful iteration, which you just hit the nail on the head. In the early stages, we just wanted to move quickly on everything. That came with a trade-off of either. So yes, we were able to move quickly, and we prided ourselves on like doing more in a week than most people do in 6 months. But a lot of times it meant we moved quickly on the wrong things, prioritizing speed over deliberation, or rushing the execution of something that was lower quality than we otherwise could have had. So instead, I'm like, okay, peaceful iteration. Peaceful is being more deliberate in what we choose, knowing that we can't fix that many things and we can only pursue so many things. And then iteration, which is just, we're very rarely going to do peaceful new initiatives. It's really just fixing or improving the really small parts of things we already have.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think that's the maturity. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot of good clarity in here. I always love when I get to see your brain spend a lot of time on one specific topic.
And so I spent the morning filming like a pretty big video on this, because so that was one peaceful iteration. The second was going from extreme ownership, which is very like military. And I do think that how I wanted to phrase these and why I like the acquisition values, and I put this in the video too, it's like you're really just finding a way to add a couple words that are memorable to like a few core ideas. And for us, it's like how you behave, how you show up energy wise, and then how you improve. So the type of person we want to work with, the type of energy we want them to show up with, and how we improve as a business.
Mm-hmm.
Extreme ownership, like the emphasis of it was like when you're given something, you do it, you take ownership for its outcome. That's great when there's individual responsibility. But now with how much the team relies on one another and the fact that there are other departments working together, I put this of set the standard instead of extreme ownership. The big reason being, if we want you, it works recursively, or I guess hierarchically, however you want to say that. So if we want to set the standard as a company for product quality and client experience in the education industry, that's a great lens for everything we do, right? We are setting the standard with everything we create. That goes a layer below that's like, okay, so if each department sets the standard for all other departments to try to emulate, we're going to be a more successful company, right? If each department, not competing against each other, but is just trying to do their absolute best, such that, wow, sales is absolutely killing it. The success team who manages the same way, like, or the marketing team, for example, they have the same numbers, not the same numbers, but they look at like their personal numbers, see that it's not as good as how sales is doing. They're naturally going to raise their standards. Within each department, each individual contributor can say, I'm going to set the standard in the department such that everyone else emulates me. And if everyone else is trying to set the standard in a collaborative way, it just ultimately leads to a better performing department. And then each individual, how this extends to like personal life is, are you taking care of your health, relationships, habits, mindset, everything that allows you to set the standard within your department, that allows the department to set the standard and ultimately allows us to. And that I just continue to break this down in like, okay, if we have that, how's that going to change our behavior? And I think just having a handful of questions to ask ourselves of like, is this person setting the standard? Are we setting the standard? Are you and I, with how we're conducting and managing and prioritizing, setting the standard? And if we can, I already can see this value starting to reinforce such that when someone does a behavior that was like moving something forward in the past, we use the tempo and ownership emoji. But like when someone's just going above and beyond and really having a high level of performance, it's very clear to call them out and shout them out and say, this person is setting the standard now. We need to emulate what they're doing.
Yep. Yeah, I do like that one quite a bit. I like the peer-to-peer friendly competition aspect of it a lot. Because it forces each person to ask the question, like, why not you?
Mm-hmm. And if we can't answer that question, it's probably that we shouldn't keep working with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And that takes us to the third one, which was my favorite one to write because it just felt the coolest, like, level of growth. And it's upgrading championship energy to dynasty energy.
Mm.
And so I put, when we first started, we had to take the approach of winning our first championship. And really before that, we made the choice that we're not a family, we're a team. And all the downstream effects of, like, competitiveness, and we have a mission that's separate from the things we do outside of that mission, all influence, like, the way we talk to one another. And I don't know if you've ever been a part of a team, Cole, that won a championship after being not that good.
Mm-hmm.
And usually what happens is there's, like, a handful of players that are really good and they just win on the back of them. And then everyone looks backwards like, how the heck did that happen? And no one really knows. And then if you go from a championship team to a dynasty, you start this perpetual flywheel that's like, after the first one, a couple free agents or other people or new players who join the team, they're high performers and they emulate the highest performers from the previous team or the ones that are still on it. The lower performers churn out because they can't keep up, and the higher performers wouldn't put up with them. And that creates new space for more people to come that are attracted to winning. And then on and on and on that flywheel spins. And so that's where we need to go from here. It's rather than seeing winning as the goal, it's winning as the standard. And just no ounce of toleration or tolerance for anything that could put the dynasty at risk. Mm-hmm. And so if you study any of the best teams that go on this generational run and then they fall, right? Because every dynasty falls at some point. And it's always after, like, one subpar season. And then there's, like, someone on the team gets a little bit more of a voice that isn't as good. And then murmurs start, and then blah, 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 all the way down until, boom, it's like, what the heck happened? How did they fall so quickly?
Yep.
And so this is like a nice double-edged sword of, like, anyone who doesn't see winning as the standard and potentially brings down anyone else, the highest performers will not tolerate that. And then that's how you build a dynasty. So this was, I'm excited to, like, change from the ring emoji to the Jordan with 5 rings, because that's where we're trying to get to, is, like, we've done it once. To keep doing it, it has to become the standard, not the goal.
Yep. A, I love that. B, I love that my reaction to that is I love the team that we have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, I have lived situations where I laughed when Alex and Layla were talking about building their first company and they got to the end. And they were like, I hate working with all these people, you know? And there were people that I really loved working with when I was building my agency, and we also hired people that I was like, that was a mistake, and I did it over and over again. So I love the feeling that we have a really great team. And also, everyone wants different things in life, you know? And inevitably, not everyone wants the same things and over different time horizons, and sometimes people change what they want, and, you know, the team will change, but the goal will not. Or the team might change, or the team will change to varying degrees, but the goal will not.
Agreed. And so I really enjoyed doing that, and I'm excited to get that video live, because the more that I can double dip content that increases retention and buy-in and drive from our team, and either builds my audience on YouTube or attracts people that ultimately would come work for us. That's, like, my whole goal with organic. So I took that video that I filmed internally and just added a hook and was like, we've generated X amount of revenue. Here's the exact values we're taking to go from A to B. Let's dive in, and, like, straight into the video from there. And that's my whole lens, is, like, I can't remember. I think it was Hormozy who said it. It's like, if you have content that is free, the people that have paid you will ascribe the value of their purchase to your free content. And so it continues to reinforce their purchase decision. And then if employees and customers are the same, the more that you have content, they will ascribe, even if it's free content that lives outside of internal, they will ascribe the value of that to the value of working with you. And so it's like, okay, these are really the same mechanisms at play. And it all comes down to just having videos on YouTube, and that's where we're going.
Yep.
Which is a nice realization of having the one thing. It's like, we both make YouTube videos. Solves everything. At least for me.
Yeah. YouTube continues to be such a fascinating platform for me. It's the long tail nature of it that I think is why it's so powerful. I'm loving, I mean, it's been this way for a couple of years, but you can just get such crazy distribution on X still,
Hmm.
and that's what makes it such a cool platform. But I also hate the fact that it's like you write something that's so valuable and then it goes viral for 2 days and then it sort of disappears and no one finds it again, you know?
Hmm.
And so, which again goes back to everything we talk about, which is like build your library, copy paste it, share it across multiple platforms, reuse it, slice it, whatever. But yeah, making YouTube a non-negotiable for the year will be really interesting. It's also a really fun creative outlet. It forces you
Hmm.
to think and articulate things in a very different way than just
Hmm.
pure writing, because you have to say it out loud.
I'm enjoying it more because I find that the friction for me in writing is like the last 10% of formatting and turning it into, a more, I find just like having to find the sentence structure for something I really think is just better off as a fragmented bullet and then riffing on it. And that's why, like, for me, my YouTube strategy is just outline, 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 talk over outline, and then maybe transcribe and have AI turn it into a written post. But I am never excited when I have the piece 80 to 90% done and then have to go edit it. I would
Hmm.
rather just do the outline and then talk for the editing part. And so that is like I'm just eliminating that friction from my workflow entirely. It's like I'm not going to publish it. I'm just going to publish the outline and then publish the video. It's like you can
Hmm.
read the outline. It will make more sense with the video because I go deeper on
Yep. Another cool thing I feel like you did this past week, not that we have to share anything like super personal about it, but just the exercise of going through and asking different team members, like I know you did this with the sales guys, like what are your goals for the year?
it.
And how are you tracking that? And what are you going to do that's going to get you there? And I'm such a big believer in whatever type of work you do is the vehicle through which you learn all the other skills. And
Mm-hmm.
I think so many people have that backwards where they're like, but if I pick a different thing, I'm gonna somehow it's
Yeah.
different. It never is. It never is. You learn all the same fundamental skills in whatever vehicle you pick. Um, and I also feel like that's a very powerful, I even hesitate calling it like a retention tool because we care more than that. But I think it's a really effective way of getting continuous buy-in from team members where they have to see their work as more than just a job.
Mm-hmm.
It is the vehicle through which you are facilitating your growth. It's almost like our responsibility to help them and mirror back and help them understand how much they're growing and all the different ways that they're growing. Because
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, it's like you perform the tasks and it's like watching your hair grow in the mirror. Like you don't see the ways that you've changed.
Mm. I enjoyed doing that. It took a lot of energy, but I said, so I've managed a sales team, and we really should do this at the highest level too, with like our whole executive and department head team, because
Yeah.
that's ultimately who we report or who reports to us. Um, but I asked them, what's your income goal for the year and how much did you make last year? Why do you want that income goal? Like what fundamentally
What
will change in your,
changes?
what changes in your day to day? And I started there with them. And then I just phrased a simple question of like, okay, so you made blank last year. Your goal is to make blank this year. What are you going to do differently?
Mm-hmm.
And just left it at that. And like just being asked that question is like, oh yeah, I actually have to do something different in or better or more effectively, more consistently. And just watching their brains kind of go, yeah, I guess I do have to do something different. Wow, I didn't really think about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just going to happen. And I wish someone had asked me that. And I'm like asking myself that is what am I going to do differently this year? Because if you have a bigger goal, I think that Tom Bilyeu quote was really good of like your goals create demands. And so they demand a different level of intention or whatever. And if you can't decide with if you can't tie something tangibly different, you actually don't want that goal. You just want to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was like, and a couple of them, they couldn't come up with that. I was like, so do you really want that goal or do you just enjoy the thought of it, but actually don't think it's possible and therefore you're not already failing? So side note, side quest here is like, after that workshop, I emerged with full belief that we could build something worth $100 million. A belief I didn't have before that, which implicitly means by not building it, I'm failing because I have the ability to, rather than if you don't believe you have the ability to, you're not failing. It's like, oh, I just couldn't do it. So I'm actually not failing. And so that's how I framed it to them. I was like, well, here are the numbers that get you to that exact income goal that you just laid out. And here are examples of other people that you talk to on a daily basis doing that. Therefore, it is possible. And then what I would do is like, here's your best month ever. Here's how close you are to that goal. So you're almost there on your best month. So it is possible. And that's more uncomfortable to confront than the opposite. It's like, wow, okay, now I'm just, as a default, I'm failing right now, which sucks. Because if I don't do it, then, anyway, I just thought that was an interesting thing I've been sitting with is like, if it's possible and you aren't doing it, you're default failing. And that's a good thing. Good thing if you take it the right way.
Yeah, in the most, non-condescending way, I find that the vast majority of people, especially when it comes to financial goals, have absolutely no idea why they picked the number that they picked. Myself included. Like if I trace back my own past, like I remember I have such a vivid memory of like a couple weeks before I graduated college. I was like, I had just read Think and Grow Rich, and I was like, oh, I just have to write down the number. Desire. I just have to write down the number. And I have such a vivid memory of me sitting at my desk in my college apartment and writing, I will make $1 million next year. And I remember writing that and going, I have absolutely no idea how that I can't even fathom $1 million. And yet think Napoleon Hill was like, but if you write it down, it's going to happen, right? And like, this is another topic. This might be something I write up next week is just like everyone wants to know how to make $1 million before they've made 100 grand. And everyone wants to know how to make 100 grand before they've made $1 on the internet, and like all of these things are levels and they require such different, I think that's the hardest component is like they require you to live differently. And yeah, a lot of times when you spell it out and you're like, this is actually doable, you just have to completely change how you're living your life. People are like, I don't know that I really want to do that, which is fine. But yeah, I love the like ask the question and then just let the silence linger because you have to sit in that uncomfortable silence to figure out, why did you just say the thing that you said?
And that's what I did in terms of chunking the goals. Every single one of them gave me a goal that was like 3 times what they'd done previously. And so I was like, okay, well, there are clearly milestones to get there. So why don't we start here, 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 here. And now you have 5 goals. And let's just focus on getting that first one. Because by getting that first one, it makes it easier to get the second and on and on and on. And then getting as specific as possible on what those numbers were. To be honest, we could do a better job of that on like next revenue level. I think we jumped to like wanting a consistent million from 600. And it's like, probably there's a world where it's like just 750 or 708. And then like that on its own is what gets you all the way there. So this exercise was so good in just showing me where my weaknesses were. And that's why I like doing it is because I kept saying it. And trust me, I've done this the entire time and I'm making this exact point to remind myself. So I say it out loud and don't forget it, you know? And that's this whole game is just recognizing where our blind spots are. But I feel good about having this done to start the year and then starting to reference it as a team because it just creates such a clear, like, we say these things all the time. We haven't constructed like a very clear where now I'm just going to, if someone comes to me with a decision that is a hat decision, I'm just going to link them to this part of the video and say, here you go. Like I've explained why this is not what we want to do and how that is not going to get us to where we want to go. And then just keep building that reinforcement pattern of like shared language.
Yep. There's so many fun things ahead of us this year. And I'm so excited to see where things go and the team's still growing. Like, I mean, we're in the process of hiring 2 more people and
I think
we'll
that's
see
it, though.
after that. I think
do
so.
think that's it.
I think so too. I think we need to, because we do still have some excess capacity. We definitely have headroom to grow into for sure.
And then having that, we can then continue to focus on marketing
Uh-huh.
and choose which one. And that's the whole prioritization process. And so I'm going to spend, it probably won't be this week, but I think us getting into a project management software, it's time, such that we have a centralized place of just so everyone else, I should see everyone else's number one priority at any given time. And that is what, from a resource allocation perspective, allows me to see the whole business in the best way.
Yeah, I feel like with that, I think it probably makes sense to start that excluding all the daily recurring tasks.
Right. Agreed. And then a different exercise, though, is like, I think that you just dictate with calendar, because the daily recurring thing should be blocked into the calendar anyway. And then the discretionary time needs to be put into that. But we should do the same exercise of what are the recurring things. And then if we were to put them in there, where would they go? But I think the easiest way is to, like, you have rituals and you have projects.
Yeah.
Or whatever. You have recurring and you have projects. Things that must get done every week to continue to grow the business. And I'm gonna think more on that and talk to some people on it. But that prioritization exercise that we did, that was the most, like, aha moment I've ever had. And it's probably someone else has probably done the exact same thing and, like, duh. But ranking every project, comparing every single one to each one above it until you find the final actual order. That took like 30, 45 minutes to do and probably saved us 12 hours this week.
The most illuminating part about that was, myself included, everyone's like visceral reaction of, I don't want to do this, because it's like, you're like, I don't want to sit here and think through whether or not each one of these things is important, relevant to each other, related to each other, which is like the whole point, you know? And then second is all the things on that list that I intuitively went, oh, I'll just go knock those out first, were the lowest priority things.
Right.
And you realize it was so illuminating for me, because it made me realize how many times I reach for the thing that's easiest to do first, and I'm like, oh well, if I just get it done, then it's done. But you don't realize that you just wasted effort and used up some of that, finite brain power each day doing something that really didn't move the needle at all. So interesting.
And then if we can just have that for us, because right now it's still on a note that we really haven't looked at, and then if you just have that for the whole team, and then each team has an individual view where it's like, what's the highest ranking thing that my face is attached to? And then as a department, what are those? And then for me and you, what are those?
Yeah.
And there's no perfect way to do it, but I think that this week was a great example of, like, I'm leaving this week feeling extremely productive because of that prioritization. And that required us to give trust in Daniel to, like, own the marketing calendar that I didn't even think about how that was going to get fleshed out. And then having the thing on the calendar on Mondays where anything that I need to communicate to people, I know I'm going to be able to on Monday. So if I have ideas for it, rather than like, oh, we need to go do this thing, I'm just like keeping a list of random items to talk about during that have come up, and then you communicate them all at the same time rather than just here. And we'll screw it up as we keep going, and we'll forget it, and then we'll be doing too many things again. But I think that this week felt like the actual start of the year in terms of mobilizing. And that was because we went to the workshop, and then we got back, and the year started on a Wednesday. So that week was kind of a wash. This week was like, okay, we got priorities. Let's put them into practice. And we're sticking with our Espresso Hour, which was another big win. We said it was a priority. We were going to do it. It's 3:20. It's the last thing we did this week, but I think that's the right time to do it. It's like, what did we learn this week? What are some things we want to flesh out? And then people who are interested in following along, they can.
Sorry, Meredith's losing it in the background.
Okay. Hey, she's like, feed me, or whatever she's got to go do. All's good. I can't really hear it for what it's worth.
Really? Okay. I can't tell if someone's at the door or not. Sometimes it's just the mailman and she's like, "How dare you? How dare you drop off the mail?"
Dude, okay. This might be the most dog-friendly city on Earth. We'll
Really?
finish there. So at the gym, they have a dog area in every gym that you get to bring your dog and they just get to hang and watch you work out and like chill with other dogs.
Watch you work out.
Even in like every cafe is dog friendly. Every restaurant, dogs are allowed to just come inside with you. We haven't been turned away one time. I'd say 80% of dogs are off leash, walking throughout the city with their owner, which ultimately makes the dogs calmer because they get to like flesh out the social hierarchy of it. What else? Even at like the spin studio we did a class on, there was just like a little part in the spin room that the dogs got to hang out in. So cool.
That's
So cool.
awesome.
And I've eaten my weight in tacos, found a good gym.
Nice.
Things are good.
Nice. Good tacos. Hard to beat. Hard to beat. You need one night when you don't care about being productive the next morning. You need to go find the spot that has like the tequila slash mezcal flight tasting experience.
Ooh, okay, I'm in. Yeah, I've been doing date nights on Wednesday because Thursday I usually have a handful of calls and then fall asleep early Thursday and have a productive Friday of filming and stuff like that.
Nice.
We'll see. We'll see. What
We'll see.
we'll see. For now, I'm going to go eat something. This is a lot of fun.
Nice.
Excited to keep this cranking throughout the year. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. What are you focused on in 2025? How are you embodying the maturity if you're maturing in your own business? Any takeaways? We always love to hear them. If you got requests for future videos, drop a comment. If you're on Spotify, 5-star review. Tag us on Instagram where we're starting to create more now with a screenshot of this, and we'll throw it on our story. Other than that, another Espresso Hour in the books.
That's right. We'll see you next
See you
week.
guys next week. Boom.